Hello guys, my name's Pops. Today I'm going to have a look at the PMDG 737-800, which has just been released, which I have been waiting for a long time. Just going to jump in, see if we can get the thing up and running and do a very short flight. We're going to start off in Ibiza and head to Mallorca, which is a very short hop, and hopefully we can get the thing in the air, point it in the right direction, get it on the ground without killing anybody. So yeah, let's go. So here we are in the 738 cockpit. Everything is completely cold and dark. When you first start up, you won't find it in this state. You will need to change your startup state to be cold and dark, otherwise it will be running and ready to go. First of all, actually quickly, we might just look at how you do that and how we set the fuel and the payload before we start the actual flight itself. So obviously, because we're cold and dark, there's no power to any of the aircraft. But if you go down to the FMC, click and hold the menu button, it will spark to life to enable you to do certain things to the aircraft before we actually start the simulation itself. So in FS actions, we've got our fuel and payload, as well as various other things, including the ground services, which we won't use today because this is just meant to be a short video, and certainly isn't going to be anything that's procedural or done properly. So if you're a bit of a purist, please walk away now, because this is just going to be rough and dirty and just a way of new people and old people like me coming back to it, trying to get the thing in the air. But if we just go back to the menu in the PMDG setup, there is a startup state that you can load. If you click on the soft key, it gives you lots of options. There's 3 pages as to how you want your aircraft to be set up when you first load it in. Completely cold and dark, it's that one. I've actually got it set on the cold and dark GPU, the only difference being that the plane itself is completely cold and dark, but there is a ground power unit already connected. Just saves me going back in and connecting it. So if we go back to the state of aircraft's in at the moment, everything's cold and dark, but there is ground power available because that ground power unit is connected. So if we go back to our FMC, and we can see there's an FS actions option, click on the soft key. This will bring up the menu we had before. Fuel. Now all your fuel statistics, your payload and everything else, you're going to have to obtain from wherever it is you get your information from. I would highly recommend SimBrief, mainly because of the cost involved, which is nada, which will do your routes for you. It'll give you your fuel. You can set your payload, all sorts of things. Have a good look around in there. So I know that we're going to be looking at 5,150 kilos fuel required for this journey, and the payload is 57.5. so we just put that into the 0 fuel weight amount. You can, if you want to, set all these individually, but it's for the sake of brevity at the moment, I'm just going to put it in there. It will then change everything to suitably match that and give us a center of gravity. So once we've done that, we're back to the main menu side of things. We're then in a position to actually begin firing up the plane and seeing if we can get it to go to Mallorca for us. So the first thing we need to do is get some power to the aircraft. Just before we do that, just a quick guide on what make it easier to sort of move around the cockpit here. If you press the control space key, it will put you into the pilot view, which you're going to want, and it's probably a good central position for panning around, giving you the usual view that a pilot would see, like so. If you press Control 1, it focuses more on the MCP, so all your autopilot and information and your screens are all in front of you there. Control 3 give you a good view of the FMC, and Control 6 will give you your overhead panel. All the control keys do something, but those are the ones I mainly use. 6 for overhead, 3 for the FMC, and 1 or spacebar for the main pilot view. When you're in the pilot view, if you press the spacebar by itself, it gives you a better or a higher up view, so you can see out a little better. But that's obviously a little bit, your head's a little bit stuck on the roof, so back to normal. So let's see about starting her up, see if we can get her in the sky, see if we can get to Mallorca. So the first thing I'm going to do, Control 6, and we are going to put some power in. So battery on, you can cover it over, put the emergency or arm the emergency lights as there's power, and then straight away click over to the ground power, otherwise the aircraft is just draining its own internal battery, and that's not going to get you very far at all. If we go Control 7, we can go on up to the IRS and switch them both to navigate. They should then move to align. You can move this control to HDG, and it will give you an amount of time in that display, which is the period of time it will take for the IRS to align. Now this is actually set to do it instantly at the moment, which isn't realistic at all, hence it's saying 0. But so once we've done that, we can head on down to the FMC and start sorting out a bit of information for the aircraft. So again, I'm going to emphasize this is not procedural, it's not how it's supposed to be done, it's not how people who do it properly would do it. This is merely a quick way of being able to put the information into the aircraft so that it knows what to do, where to go, and knows its background information for computing various things. Do not follow this if you want to be doing anything that's vaguely real life. If you just want to have some fun and get off the ground, then this will be fine for you. So the first thing we've got to do is tell the aircraft where it is. So we're going to press posit. It tends to, at this stage, it tends to tell you in the lower right hand corner what it wants next in a sort of logical order. So press that. The aircraft wants an IRS position, which basically tells it where in the world it's actually sat. These square boxes means that it's information that it does actually need. The dashes are information it would quite like, but it doesn't particularly need. You just need to definitely give it this. You've got 3 pages there. If you next over, these are your 2 IRS positions. If you choose one of them, click on it, it will appear in the scratch pad, which is this bottom line. Go back to your original page, so back to page 1, press on the soft key next to the boxes, and it will disappear. It's disappeared because it no longer needs it, because it picked the information up from there and it put it in there. So we are currently at Lima Echo India Bravo, nearly forgot where I was, and we are at gate 6, I believe, which is not in the database. That's not unusual. There's quite a lot of gate numbers that just don't appear, so just clear that off, forget about that, move on. Route, so our origin we've already told it. Our destination is Palma, Mallorca, so we are going to Lima Echo Papa Alpha. Flight number, it doesn't matter, it can be whatever you want it to be, so we'll call it Popsicle Games Big 1 2 3. We now then can either enter our runway here or enter it as part of the next stage, but as we know on this particular occasion, our departure runway is going to be, he says, having to look it up, runway 24 for Ibiza. So 24 into the scratch pad, tell the aircraft which runway we want to use in Ibiza to leave the island. If we now go from route page 1 to route page 2, there's not a lot of information. Basically it's wanting to know here how we're going to get from Ibiza to Mallorca. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to tell it where we're departing from and how we're going to depart. Now this will be part of your flight plan, which SimBrief will give you. In this particular case we're using the LAMP 2 Echo departure, so if we click on that, no transitions, runway 24, that's it, that's as far as our departure needs to go. If we then look at our legs, it's put in the various waypoints right up to Lampa, which are part of that departure. So at this point, ordinarily you would then either import your flight plan, or you would start inputting the route into the various sections here. You would put in an airway, or a corridor, a path, a road, or whatever you want to call it. It's an airway, but it would be a number that would tell the plane what direction to fly, what airway to fly along, and where to. So you would input the waypoint there, and it will fly from there, via there, to there. And so it goes on. As you fill them in, it gives you extra lines to fill in. If there is no particular airway, you can just put the next waypoint there, and it will you consider that to just be direct from that point to that point and go in a straight line. In this particular case, this is slightly different because we are using this LAMP 2 Echo departure, or SID, from Ibiza, which takes us to Lampa. The arrival route, or the STAR, in this particular case is also starts at Lampa. So in fact all we need to do in this particular occasion is go back to our arrival departures, arrive at Palma, tell it which runway we're going to fly into, which in this case is going to be 24 left, tell it the transition we're going to take, which is the Mike Juliet Victor, and then tell it the STAR which we are going to be using, which is the LAMP 2 Papa. We then go back to our route. We can now see the various sectors of the route put in, but basically we're going from a LAMP starting point to Lampa to a LAMP end point. It has a transition, and then it's heading for the ILS of the runway 24 left in Mallorca. So we can activate that route and press execute. The next thing, we can then look at our legs. It will give us a more detailed breakdown of where we're going to be at each individual point until we finally arrive at the runway, hopefully all in one piece. If you go back to the init.ref top left hand corner button, it will take to the next stage. So 0 fuel weight. In this particular case we said it was going to be, in fact we don't need to do anything. If we just click on that button and click it again, because we've already input it, it will drag that information in, which also works out the center of gravity for you. Reserves, put in an amount of fuel that you want to have left. This is the point at which the aircraft starts to panic and tells you that it's running out of fuel if you get anywhere near this amount. Cost index will be part of your flight plan. Let's just say 65. Now then, cruise altitude. Now ordinarily this figure is going to be 30 something, 34, 35, 37,000. Because this flight is so short, we're not going to get anywhere near that. So let me have a look on the flight plan. Yeah, 11,000. So 11,000 is as high as we're going. Transition altitude, this defaults to 18,000 because that's the standard transition altitude in the United States. However, it's different everywhere in Europe. I'm just going to go for 6,000. Again, possibly not accurate, but just a means of getting some information into the aircraft, which is more realistic than 18,000. Apart from anything else, we won't be going anywhere near 18,000 today because we're going to level off at 11. Execute that. Then we need to tell it some information about the engines. This is to do with the power usage on takeoff. We're going to leave everything here that's standard, but ordinarily, again, you would be looking at the particular airport and the rules and regulations, the weight of your aircraft. You may want, if you've got a very light aircraft, a very short route like this, you may want to do a derate, just because it gives the aircraft less stress when you're taking off. Climb, again, it's to do with chilling out a bit, so you might be going into an area which wants you to have a more gentle, quieter climb. Climb 2 would be less oomph, but we're just going to leave it all as it is and go to our takeoff page. Flaps will be 5. So at this point, the aircraft comes up with some numbers with regard to the speeds at which you're going to A, be committed, B, actually want to leave the ground, and C, have a good chance of staying in the air. So we're going to use those in a second, but just for the moment we're just going to click on that there, which is going to pull the centre of gravity in. That in turn calculates what our trim setting should be, so we need to remember that, 5.32, and then we can just click on each of those to bring them here, and it gives us a total takeoff weight. So that's, for the moment, that's as much as we want to be doing down here, and we'll move on to the next section. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to check to make sure our flight plan just makes sense. Although this is highly unscientific and highly inaccurate, we need to just we need to just double check that the flight plan is going to actually get us to where we want to go. So if we change this here to plan, we can see on the display here has changed, and the word step appears there. Now what we can now do is step through these various waypoints, and we're going to actually just pan that out a little bit, and then as we step through, it changes here to the next waypoint, which also moves the aircraft on the screen, the centre of the screen rather, to the next waypoint, and we can just double check to make sure these are all in a sensible order, makes sense. Get to Lampa, that's our top of descent, TD. That's our transition point. Actually, now if we bring that just a little bit closer, from there we are going to, yeah, and that all looks like we would expect it to look. We're going to fly parallel away from the airport, turn left again, at which point we are heading straight towards the runway. And we arrive to huge applause and cheers, because it's a Ryanair flight, to runway 24 left in Mallorca. So we just put that back to map. That will be what we'll be using once we're up and running. So let's control 1, we can put that back, give us a better view. Right, start filling some of this in. Now ordinarily air traffic control would give you your first altitude. We're not using air traffic control, so we're just going to put this to 11,000. Our heading is initially our runway heading. Oh, we don't want to do that, that's just actually changed our maximum bank angle. Let's put that back to 30. Okay, runway heading, Ibiza 24 is actually 241. Let's let's go the long way round because we've got all day. Oh, what are you doing? Come on, Pops, get a grip. 241. This isn't rocket science. Right, here we go. 241. We're going to change the indicated airspeed to the V2 amount. 145. So we've got our heading, our altitude, and our speed in. Flight directors, there's two, one there, one there. Do this one first because then this gives this side of the aircraft control. If you do that one first, that one becomes the master and this one becomes whatever the opposite, the slave, I don't know. But anyway, you want to do the left hand side one, the captain side one, and the pilot monitoring, which in this case we're assuming is the right hand seater. There will be no illumination there. Once you've got this far, we're now ready to start thinking about what we need to be able to see in front of us. Click on the center there. This puts the traffic system on. It's not actually turned on yet, but it puts the right display in front of you, and then you can choose whatever you might want. Terrain, you might want the weather. It's Ibiza in August, so you probably don't need the weather, but for today's we're not gonna worry too much about it. I'm gonna run that back down again to a smallish amount. You might want to put some data in, some waypoints, just mess around with these to your heart's content really. So we're just going to quickly do something similar for the co-pilot. Just put his traffic on. I think that will do. The Barrow is already set, so the QNH is 1013, and for the moment that's all we're going to do down here. There are obviously all sorts of things that you should in real life be checking and doing, setting courses, setting radios. We're not going to worry about any of that. That doesn't make any difference to us getting off the ground. We will use the radio system, the navigation system, to land if we ever get that far. But for now, we're just going to leave everything as is. Right, so now we're going to just go back up to the overhead and start flicking some switches. We're not going to worry too much for the purpose of this video. Again, very simple, newbie, get you off the ground. Don't worry too much about the technology behind it. We're just gonna go for it. So we're not going to worry about what everything's actually doing. We're just going to do it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the left aft fuel pump on, and set the APU bleed to on, and then we're going to put the APU on. So you click on. We try to click on.
6457 requesting the end of pushback.
And when we get the text out of the way, and then we again and it will flick to start and flick back again to on. What's going to happen now is that the auxiliary power unit, which is what we're going to be using to start the engines, will start up the small jet engine in the back of the aircraft, and that is what we're going to be using as our power source once we've taken the ground power off. Obviously if we take the ground power off without having a power source and without the engines running, the battery is going to deplete rapidly and cause all sorts of problems. So you see the gauge goes up there, shoots up, will come back down to about 2. In the meantime, we are going to put some lights on. The position light by default is already in the steady position, which is good because we've powered the aircraft up without really telling anybody outside that we're here. So let's just switch everything else on for the moment. Okay, so it's the middle of the day. We don't need the logo lights on. We don't need the wing lights on, but we'll leave the others on. Our cruise altitude is only 11,000 feet, so we'll feed that into there. This is so that the air conditioning and air pressure units know what's going on. You need to put in your landing altitude to the nearest 50 feet here. Now our landing altitude in Mallorca is 8 foot, so the altitude there can stay at 0. The biggest problem we've got is if there's a high tide. It's only 8 foot above sea level. Next we're just going to check APU bleed is on. Packs we will leave off for the moment. Recirculation fans are on auto. I'm going to put the window heat on. Just to get some water into the windscreen. Probe, just going to leave that off for the moment. Hydraulics can go on. Emergency lights are on. Let's make sure everybody's strapped in. And we can leave the chime off for the moment. This will tell us to sit, or tell the crew to sit down. So we've now gone through this. The APU settled at 4, not 2. So what we need to do now is transfer the power away from the ground power to the APU. So if we click these two, 1, 2, the aircraft is now being powered by the APU. Now if you move this knob here, it will tell you, so ground power source is giving you that much. The left engine is giving you nothing because it's not on. The right engine is giving you nothing because it's not on. The APU, and that's our current source because we've clicked those 2 buttons. Now that we've clicked those 2 buttons, we can go back to our FMC, Control 3, back to our menu and our FS sections, because we can look at the ground services. We can take that ground power unit off, so we can release that. In fact, if you press on the wheel chocks and click that to remove, it will automatically remove the ground power unit, start closing doors, moving stairways. Everything will sort of move out of the way because the chocks have been removed. So if we look down here, the ground power just disappeared before our very eyes, and the stairway is moving out of the way. So we're now left in isolation with just the pushback truck in front of us. Just going back inside the aircraft, if we go back up to here, this is the area where you would see if any of the doors were open. That one was illuminated until I pressed that chocks remove button. That door's now been closed, that light goes out. So we now know that the doors are all closed and we're ready, sort of isolated ourselves, we're disconnected from the outside world, and we're ready to start doing our next steps. As we've removed the chocks, we just want to make sure that our parking brake is on, which it isn't. Now you'll find if you click on that, it becomes very reluctant to actually set. What you need to do is apply tow brakes on the aircraft, then click. That will set your parking brake. Now you're in a situation where the plane isn't going to start rolling off in some random direction. So we go back to the overhead panel. One thing I actually forgot to mention, or just skipped over, anti-ice. The reason I skipped over it is because we're in Ibiza, it's August, it's 30 odd degrees outside, it's 30 odd degrees in Mallorca, and there is not a cloud in the sky, so we don't need to worry about it. But depending on where and when you're flying, anti-ice might become a thing way beyond the scope of this little tiny basic dirty flight we're doing. So yeah, we're not going to worry too much about that for the moment. Okay, so we've set the parking brake. We want to turn the fuel pumps on. If you go down to the main display again, it will tell you there are left tank, right tank, centre tank. In this particular case there is no fuel in the centre tank, unsurprisingly, because we're only going next door. But whether there is fuel in that centre tank or not will determine whether you switch on the pumps for the centre tank, which are those two. In this case obviously we don't touch them, we leave them where we are, so we've just got the 4 fuel pumps on. We're going to click that, which is putting the yaw damper on, so we get a little less bumpier ride. we are going to on the LNAV and VNAV. So LNAV is the lateral navigation, so the left, right, turn this way, turn that way. The VNAV is the vertical navigation, so up a bit, down a bit, blah blah. Combination of the two, obviously left a bit and up a bit, sends you in the right direction at the right height. We're also going to yeah, we're just going to again, this isn't anywhere near what you would do in real life, but air traffic control will have given you a squawk code. Enter your 4-digit squawk code in there, and then we're going to just put that straight over to TARA, which is the far right hand side setting. The traffic situation then changes on your display, and there you can see it's picking up traffic in the local vicinity. Okay, once we've done that, let's set our auto brakes to rejected takeoff. We've already set it, the altimeter, but if you want to press B, that will just confirm that it's set as the same as the sim, which in this case is 1013. That is actually what the standard level would be, and it is just coincidence that today's pressure is the same as the standard.
Ryanair 6419er requesting the end of pushback. Ryanair 6419er request to end pushback received.
Go on, Ryanair, get out of the way. Okay, we're going to need the engine display, which is already there. Let's click that back to something more useful. So next we're going to set up our pushback. So if we go to FS Actions and to pushback, this is obviously on the menu we saw earlier, and basically, yeah, it's going to give us various options about turning, the style of push we want to use, how far we want to go, or how far it is to the taxi line. I haven't got a clue how far it is in Ibiza, so we're just going to leave it as set. Select a tug. Got our grand selection of one, and then we're pretty much just set up there. We just need to press the start, and we'll be on our way backwards. I think we can actually get ourselves up and away now. Let's start the pushback.
Cockpit to ground. Go ahead. We've been cleared for pushback and start tail straight out. Roger that. Ready for push straight back. Brakes off.
Okay, so we are going to release our parking brake. Again, if you click that, nothing's going to happen.
Brakes released.
Just press the toe brakes. Parking brake will release. So now we've got our pushback in order. We are going to set either right or left ignition. Then right engine first. We're going to move that to ground. We'll see the N2 figure starts going up here. That's the number that we're concerned with at the moment. When it gets to about 22, 23, this does vary between 20 and 25 depending on which operator, but click on the fuel source. Engine will start if everything has been done properly. Let's just have a look outside, just so we know where to stop this. What we'll do is we'll just get over the yellow line. We'll stop, we'll hold for a minute, and then we'll taxi up that way, and then up there to the end. So in the meantime, we need to flick our control to continuous for when we take off, and we can now flick that one to ground because that will start engine number 1. Fuel flow starts up, comes up here. When that figure there gets to, let's say, 23, we're going to put the fuel in. from here. And in the meantime, let's fuel in. Right, let's quickly just go back outside. Yeah, it stopped automatically. Actually, that was about the perfect distance on the pushback. So go back inside. Parking brake on. Again.
Brake set.
Toe brakes. Parking brake on. Parking brake is now set. And the pushback system will shut down and disconnect.
Hold. Watch for the salute and release from guidance on your right. Have a good flight.
Thanks, mate. Okay, again, continuous. We now have 2 running engines. Both are fine. Both are running as we'd expect them to be. Okay, the FMC is giving us a navigation warning, but we're going to ignore that for the moment. So we'll just have a quick look around, see what. And we've got a master caution light. So, air conditioning. Well, we haven't got that far yet. Okay, so now that the engines are up and running, back up to the top, we need to make sure the engine bleeds are on, and they will take their power from the engines. So we switch the generators over to the engines 1 and 2. Switch our indicator to either 1 or 2 so we know that there is power there. The APU now is still running but isn't in any way connected to the aircraft as such, so we can switch the APU bleed off. We do make sure, of course, the engine bleeds are on before we switch the APU bleed off. We can then switch the APU itself off. We're going to put the packs onto auto, so that's the air conditioning will now be running. In the real world you would probably have put them on while you were sat at the stand, otherwise your passengers are going to be very uncomfortable, but you'd want them off while you do the engine start and put them back on again once you're up and running. We're going to put the probes on. Anti-ice we've already said we don't need. Probes are on, packs are on. The isolation valve to auto. What else? Maybe bleed off. So taxi and runway lights on. And that will do us for the moment. We can now think about, so control space to get us back into a sort of a proper pilot position. We're going to take the parking brake off. We're going to give it a little bit of oomph. What is going on with this jetway? We're way too close to the other aircraft, aren't we? So we're going to ignore our very bad taxi.
232 request taxi to the gate. Ryanair 5232 taxi to gate 6 via taxiway Echo Bravo.
So get ourselves into taxi mode. We're going to make sure the auto throttle is on.
Taxiing to gate 6 via taxiway Echo Bravo Ryanair 5232.
We're going to put the flaps down to 5. Flap indicator starts going down. And we're now going to just keep taxiing until we get to the end of the runway. Okay, so we're now approaching the end of the runway. We're just going to turn in here. And at which point we're going to stop. And just for a moment, we're going to put the parking brake on. One thing we should have done was maybe tell the crew to sit down, chime on. So now we're here, we want to turn the taxi lights off, landing lights on, and let's move over for ease of seeing it. The position light, we're going to click strobe and steady, so that's 2 clicks up. Like we said before, low wing light aren't really required on this particular flight. Let's go back to our cockpit. We've obviously, assuming we've got clearance from Clarence, and then we're going to take the parking brake off just by tapping the toe brakes, and we're going to line ourselves up. Get ourselves nicely lined up. Give it a tiny bit of throttle. Let it steady out. And then we're going to press this screw head here, which is going to simulate our takeoff go around. If I get it right. As soon as you press that, the acceleration, the engine control and the like is taken over by the plane's computers.
V1.
V1 rotate. And we get to VR, we pull back gently. We lift
Positive
up.
rate of climb.
We've got a positive rate of climb, so we lift the gear up. And again, for ease of doing it, we're going to switch the autopilot on pretty much straight away here. The autopilot will now follow its predetermined climb, which is the VNAV, and it will follow the predetermined route, which is the LNAV. Let's just pan that out a bit. So it's going to come up here, turn left, left again, turn around and head for New York. So in the meantime, the thing we need to be worried about is cleaning up a bit, so we turn the gear off. We can put that up. We want to start thinking about putting our flaps up a bit. So flaps 2. Flaps 1, taking the cue from here. And flaps up. So now we've flaps are up, gear is up, the plane is in LNAV, VNAV, the autopilot is dealing with the engine speed, is trying to match up with this magenta indicator here. We can turn this engine display off, just press the engine button there. It will give us everything we need to know anyway. Once we reach 6,000, because that's our transition altitude, we hit standard. Changes to STD. In this particular case, it won't have made any difference because the standard is 1013 anyway. So it was at standard because that's what it actually is. click on the top of the
Evasive
yoke
ground Boeing
here
6962
to remove it out of
requesting
the way. It
pushback.
makes it easier to see.
Boeing 6962 pushback request accepted.
Okay, we're coming up on 10,000 feet. Once we get to 10,000, we can turn the landing lights off. Turn the chime off and the seats to auto. We can turn the engine start switches back off. Everything else at the moment we'll just leave as it is. Now in this particular case we are going to rapidly get to our top of descent, which is in 74 miles. Let's just clear that message. So before we get to our top of descent, we're going to need to sort out our descent parameters. One thing that is confusing the system here is that at the moment it thinks that our transition altitude goes to standards at 6,000 on the way up and 18,000 on the way down, so it doesn't really know what to do because we're between the two and it doesn't know whether we're going up or down. So we just need to change this. Let's go back into the descent screen and the forecast, and where it says transition level, in this particular case I'm going to change that to 6,000 as well. Lights back on, and it's less confused now, so it hasn't got a box around it. Okay, so what normally happens now is we cruise along for several hours, and we then start worrying about our descent. In this particular case we pretty much need to start worrying about our descent straight away. That's Ibiza there, and in front of us, not a million miles away, will be Mallorca. So let's have a quick look around outside and then we'll come back in and we'll start doing our descent. Okay, so we're now 30 miles from our top of descent, so we're going to start thinking about doing some stuff here. I'm going to change the altitude here down to 3,000. Which is the point at which we're going to capture the ILS. We'll put the auto brake on, again hugely unscientific this, I'm just going to put it to 2. We'll have a look at our FMC. And we need to set our approach. Now what we need to do here is take note of a couple of things. Firstly, we're going to take that value there, the 30,144. 144 is our landing speed, and we're going to put it there so the aircraft knows what flap setting we're using, which is 30, and what speed we need to be going at when we land. We also need to set the ILS and the navigation system, so 109.3, so 109.3, and again 109.3, and the runway heading, which was 238, and we're going to set that on both sides, so 238 and 238, and now 17 miles from our top of descent. We're going to set some minimums. I will just say 200 feet. Now let's say 250. Remember, the runway is virtually at sea level, and we're going to make sure we've got our pressure set. The pressure on landing is 1014, but we leave standard on for the moment until we get down to our 6,000 feet. So that'll do us for the moment. Let's put that back on legs. We can see where our top of descent is now. We're just going to wait for it to do its thing. What we should have been doing all along is changing our heading to correspond with the heading we're actually going in. In case we need to hit the heading select button, take it off the LNAV. That way when we hit the heading select button, it doesn't fly off in some random direction, it keeps going in the direction we're already going in. There's Mallorca. We've just passed, or just behind the pillar there is Magaluf and Palma Nova. This is the cruise port. The city of Palma and the airport is here. We're going to go past the airport, turn left and come back that way. See there's someone here about 10 miles away from us. They're slightly above us and they're going up, so they're not going to be a problem. And that's our top of descent, so the aircraft will now automatically start descending. Speed will drop to 250. Coming up on 10,000 feet, so we're going to put the seat belts back on, and we're going to put the landing lights on. Just click on the bar at the top, we're going to turn them all on. You might want to put the logo lights on. We should have turned the wheel lights off, so they should be off already. Likewise, by the time we get to 10,000 feet, we should be at 250 or below. We're going to arm the speed brake. It's actually telling us drag is required, so we ought to be using the speed brake, but I already know that this is going to sort itself out. For those of you who know the island there, Palma Nova, Magaluf, many a misspent youth in Magaluf. Airport's here. We're going that way shortly. Okay, let's pull that in a bit so we can see what we're doing. 5 miles to go till we turn right. The little indicator here tells us that we are on the correct vertical flight path, and we're actually flying 10 knots too high. This is the drag required bit, but we'll let that sort itself out in a moment. Quick look outside. Cruise ships, looks like there's one there. City of Palma and the airport we're heading to. So we are going to have to put in some drag because we're just not slowing down. So what we need to be looking out for now is the altitude. Once we get to 6,000 we need to change from standard to whatever the actual pressure is. In this case it's not a lot different. Standard is 1013, sorry 1013, and we're actually changing to 1014. Coming up 5 miles to go to our deceleration point. Let's just move spoilers back in. Really need to set up a proper key for that. Spoilers are armed. We arm the spoilers so that they rise when you hit the ground. We've gone below 6,000. We've forgotten to press our standard button, so we do it now. And it gives us the right air pressure. And the beautiful island of Mallorca, which I will be going to in a couple of months. Only for a day, but I will be there. Okay, so we're now turning in. This dotted line is the runway. No, it isn't the runway, it's the approach to the runway. So we know once we're on that dotted line, we're actually heading down to the runway, which is here. So we're going to come round. We need to start slowing down. We've got 18 miles, 17 miles to go. Start slowing. Again, we should be setting our heading to the heading we're actually doing. I'm going to have to start putting flaps down. So flaps 1. Should help us slow down a bit. Flaps 2. Okay, we're going to hit the localizer button. This will bring us now into a situation where it will lock on to the guidance system that will take us to the runway, which it has done straight away.
Traffic. Traffic.
I'm going to ignore the traffic warning. $11 miles to go. Just wait for that to line up. We're going to go flaps 5. And now we're on the localizer. We're going to hit the approach button. And the aircraft will follow the glide slope. So it will start descending. We're going to put this down to our landing speed +5, so 149. There is plenty of traffic around us, which all appears to be going to 24 right, so we can ignore it for the moment. Flaps 15. At this point I'm going to arm the second autopilot. That noise is telling us that we've put flaps 15 down and we haven't put the gear down. So gear down. Down so the noise stops. Let's just change our... Oh no, see, now that's what you've got to be careful what you're doing. We're going to change our heading to 237. Which is the course for landing. 4 miles to go. Should have a good view out the window. So flaps 30. So flaps are down. Gear is down. Spoilers are armed. A bit high, but we'll trust. I'm going to actually leave the autopilot on, just let it auto land. Again, landing is something that we need to do a lot more carefully if we're going to do it properly. Let's just get on the ground so that we've completed our first flight in this new PMDG product. We're also going to ignore the aircraft that's just pulled onto the runway in front of us.
Plus 100. Minimums. $50, $40, $30, $20, $10.
Thrust on. Pedals aren't working. First thrust off. Water brakes off. Went a bit quick, but we'll leg it out here. emergency lights on. Speeding like a bullet across the... Ooh. We did a bit of a runway incursion there. So let's just get to a parking point and then we'll get on with our lives. This has taken far longer than I was going to do, to be honest. Obviously at this point you're following directions of ground controllers, but again we are just making this up as we go along. So let's follow this round. Way too quickly in. If you go on holiday and your aircraft comes in that quickly, the pilot's probably got a medical problem. So parking brake, and that is it. So the other thing we should have done while we were taxiing a little bit is put our flaps up, cleaned our aircraft up, put our spoilers down, flaps up. All that should have been done as soon as you came off the runway. But again, all we're interested in is getting from A to B and seeing how this beautiful piece of software works. So I think that's it. That'll do us for now. We could just put some ground power on. So set the chocks, request some ground power. That's now connecting. Does anybody know how to stop these stupid pop-ups? It will say release once it's, there we go, once it's connected, and we can now transfer to the ground power. So the aircraft power is no longer controlling the thing. Let's turn some lights off. We can cancel the warnings. And we can turn our engines off. And that I think will do. That is that. Thank you very much for watching. If anybody's actually managed to get this far, like I say, I'm going to emphasize again before anybody else decides to say it, there was nothing correct about anything that's just been done. It's just a way of you being able to use your software that you've just bought from PMDG, have a look around, see what things do. What I would suggest is that you now start reading on how to do it properly. This is fun, but if you really want to get the most out of this aircraft, do some reading, do some learning, watch some proper pilots, which certainly isn't me, on YouTube and see how they do it, and just have a great time. It is a fantastic piece of software. So thank you very, very much for watching, and I will see you soon. Cheers.